Good morning, YouTube. Maybe I should say, what's up, YouTube? Apparently that's the thing. I was going to do this whole, fake wake-up scene in the van. If you've ever seen those fake wake-up scenes on other channels, just know it's absolutely fake. Because somebody has to set up the camera. And so by the time I dug out my tripod, dug out my cell phone holder, did all of those things, I was like, nah, I'm just gonna talk to the camera. I'm not doing that fake wake up shot. I may do one in the future just for fun. But if you've ever seen people waking up in a van and it's just a couple and it's like just them and they're both in bed, that shot was faked. Somebody got up. Look, my lighting isn't even perfect. You know why my lighting isn't perfect half the time? Because by the time I figure out how to set up the shot, which is way easier in this van, like the tripod right now is sitting in an open space on the floor that I never had in the minivan. Like, it was so hard to set up shots in the minivan so that they were lit enough, especially when I was waking up and it was dark. There were times the screen was just black. Now, I could see, but it wasn't enough lighting for the camera to pick it up. And so I would start, shooting something and it was really dark and I'd be like, screw it, and I'd wait till I wake up. But that's not what this video is about. I am planning to set out on a journey, and it has to do with my secret, you'll see why I have this in a second, my secret storage unit. Now, you guys will also get to see a little bit of my routine in that I'm going to knock out both of these things in this morning. What is both of these things? This is my wash up. This is my bath, and which I've shown before. I wash up every morning out of this. Couple of cups of water and a washcloth, and I'm totally clean. I don't need a freaking shower except the couple of times a month that I wash my hair. I can wash my whole body out of this. I don't need to physically get in it. I don't need to pour water over my head. I can just take a washcloth, put it in the soapy water, and wash all of my body parts. Now, in the morning, what I do to help with that is I boil a little bit of water. And I even did this in the minivan. And then I mix that with a little bit of room temperature water. And then I just use that to clean off. If the water is not looking great, then I switch this out. This is a method that has been used for years to clean. Since before the age of traditional plumbing as we see it, since before the age of the shower that everyone's obsessed with, it's the only way to get clean, people just took buckets of water, soap and water, washed the body. It's really simple, and it works. People act like if you don't have a giant, waterproof square to stand up in with water showering over your head every morning, that you're not clean, and that's just not true. Now, it can be kind of challenging with washing your hair, but honestly, don't have to wash your hair every day. I didn't wash my hair every day when I was in a traditional apartment. That's never been the case, and I believe for most black hair especially, it's not the case. But I'm not going to speak for other people. I just don't know anybody of my hue that wash their hair every day. And even some of the white people I know who've moved into van life and defaulted to not washing their hair every single day if they did before, have had healthier hair not washing it every day instead of having specific times, moments, schedules where they do wash their hair. I need to get all my stuffed animals off the floor. There's not enough room for the stuffed animals and me on the bed. This is Isaac, by the way. Say hi, Isaac. He's been the greatest dog ever, and he was in my other van. And you know why he's a great dog? He never bothers me for food. He doesn't get overheated in the van. I do wish he could go for walks. That's the part I would love to have a dog for. But if it's hot in the van, he's fine. If it's cold in the van, he's fine. He's a relatively effortless dog to take care of. He came to California with me in a bag from Baltimore, and now he gets to go back to Baltimore. Are you excited? All right, cool. Say bye, Isaac. I know you're really grown woman. You're playing with a stuffed animal. Isaac, go to the bed. Take care of everybody. Oh how this video was supposed to turn out. I'm gonna put some water in my bucket, and then I'll talk about my secret storage unit and how I ended up with it and why it's on the East Coast and all of those things. But let's see how loud this water pump is. It's not too bad. No, you're not crazy. I have to hit the water pump button and leave this open. If I close this and I turn on the water pump, I always end up having a backup issue down there. It's like it can't handle the pressure. And so it's easier just to keep the faucet open, push the water pump button, and then have the water pump just pump water through. And it works. And it's fine. It's not perfect, but it works. That's all that matters is the result, is I get to have water in a bucket. But if you ask me if I would ever do a sink again, I don't know that I would, to be quite honest. I think just having a water jug with a spigot is highly efficient. You don't have to worry about electricity. You don't have to worry about plumbing. It's literally just a bottle with a spigot on the end. So like if I had like a shelf set up here and it was strapped down and there was a bucket and it was very secure, that's the thing. And that's all I had in my minivan, is I had a little, raised area where I had a bucket with a spigot, and that was it. Not a bucket, but one of those water jugs, those legit camping water jugs with a spigot, and it was great and it was fine and it worked perfectly. And I lived like that and at first I didn't even have a permanent place set up. I just had jugs like behind my bed or under my bed or beside my bed. But it worked perfectly. It was effortless. It didn't require any electricity. It didn't take up any space in the van. Now don't get me wrong, I've been enjoying this sink. What's really nice is having the drain. So I might set up a small bowl area with a drain into a waste bucket, because sometimes that could get awkward, getting out the bucket for the wastewater. After you wash up, you now have dirty water, so you need a container to put that in so that you can then take that container and dump it, which is all you're doing with this as well. This fancy sink is up here, but underneath there's just a jug that I pull out and then I dump the water. But ease of use, this is harder to me. Harder to set up, harder to clean, or harder to make work than just getting a jug with a spigot on it, to be quite honest. Not complaining. Great that it was here. Happy that I learned how to install a water pump, even though it isn't perfect. Happy I have that knowledge to have new knowledge. But with that knowledge, it's just not that big of a deal to me in the future. So should I ever replace this van or fully gut this van, I don't know that I'd go back to a water pump like this. Also, it just uses more water at times when I don't want to use a lot of water. So I'm thinking about getting a spray bottle for those times where I'm really trying to limit my water use. For something like this, like filling a pan, it's great. Let me turn it around so you can kind of see what's going on here. I'm going to move my bucket out of the way. I'm going to move my teacup out of the way, and I'm going to show you guys something really cool that I got from the store. And so here it is. And all I do with this is, let's see if I can tip you down a little bit. We'll see how much of a clean cut this is. All right. What's that? Oh, it's my pants. Okay. I was like, what's that yellow? And I'm like, it's the Hufflepuff. I'm like, there's nothing yellow on my floor. It's the Hufflepuff pants. So this clips here. And I love it because you can put it anywhere you want and you have an instant cup holder. If you had a wine glass, which I don't, that's what this is for. And the base, in theory, is wide enough to still hold the wine glass flipped this way. And you can put the stem in between here. But I don't drink wine. So I almost exclusively use it in this position. Drop my cup in. Frees up the counter space to still be used. And it's great. Let me move my keys out the way. Alright, so now we're just going to get our water boiling. People always ask me for routine videos, so I guess this is as close as you're going to get to, like, some of what my morning routine is. But this, Ideally, this is what's bad about this always being set up. I used to always put my gas in the unlock position, and sometimes I leave it in the lock position. Now, with the butane cans, it's not too much of a big deal, but if I were to use the propane setup, which involves running a hose back from here, and this is a propane butane stove, if I were to, like, yes, I'm widening it up a bit so you can see my sticker. Grand reveal! I stuck the sticker on here, so it doesn't say gas one anymore. It says Weirdo Shoe Night. But if I do have propane, it does tend to, like, leak a little bit easier, whereas the butane's a little bit safer. At least for this model of stove, it's the gas one. But I do like that it's propane butane, because if I ever am in a situation, which has happened, where I can't find butane, I have like 1 billion bottles under the sink right now, so I'm good. It's nice to also know I could just use propane as well, and propane is just easier to find. Like, I literally fall over those little 8-ounce propane bottles. Whereas butane's more difficult. Now, in a perfect world, I'd set up like the big refillable propane bottle, but right now I honestly don't have room for it the way things are taking up space in the van, so I'm just going to stick with my individual bottles for now. Another thing I could use is a fill-up system from the large bottles to the small bottles, which would also work, but right now I have butane in here. Yes, it'd be nice to eliminate the butane canisters and throwing them away. We're just going to turn on this burner. And so my water's heating up in the kitchen. We're going to turn this camera around one more time. And now we're going to talk about my secret. I'm going to go up a little bit so I'm not slouching. My secret storage unit. So when I moved to California, it was for a internship. It was called a fellowship on paper, but it was the same concept as an internship. As I tend to use that word because people are more traditionally affiliated with it, but in my experience, fellowship, apprenticeship, and internship have become kind of interchangeable terms. In the past, apprenticeship used to more commonly mean that you were going to apprentice for somebody who probably would hire you in the future. That can also happen with fellowships. Fellowship is also used in a religious context, so when I use that word, that can get complicated. And in fact, the Berkeley Rep fellowship program used to be called an internship program, and it was modified for reasons I'm not going to get into, but the program itself didn't change, just what it was called. So a lot of post-college, pre-professional internships, fellowships, and apprenticeships are basically the same thing. There's you go work for this company, it's for a contractual amount of time. Disney has a whole professional internship program that's kind of defunct right now because of COVID-19, but the idea was like you get a certain amount of months to a year experience in your professional field, and that's usually the problem coming out of college, is that I don't know why I'm going into program details, but I feel like it's part of the story. The problem with coming out of college is, yes, you have the college degree, but you don't have any experience, so you're trying to send out resumes with just a degree in the unrealistic situation of college. Sorry to disappoint you, college kids. So, like, there's people with experience sometimes looking for the same job that you are because they've lost their job, they're transitioning jobs, they had to, like, move states for family reasons or something like that. So you're not in competition with your peers anymore. You're in competition with people who are already in the workforce for sometimes the same jobs. And so what these pre-professional programs do, these aren't the kind of internships that you have in college where, you know, you're still taking classes and you're going to work for this company like on the side for a few hours a week. You are doing a day job. You get up in the morning, you go to the office, whatever the office is. If that's the shop, if that's an actual desk, you know, if that's going out and plumbing every day, you're doing that job for 8 hours a day, just so it's like someone who has that job professionally. And so I've actually done a few of these programs, and they never got me that far. But I know people who have been hired by companies that they did these internship pre-professional programs with, and people who have not but have used it for experience to get in the door of somewhere else, and people who just it was a thing they did for a few months and then they ended up getting a job doing something else. In my case, I stayed in the field, but I never really made a big break into like well-paid employment until pretty much the year before COVID. So 2019 going into 2020, I was doing pretty well. I was mostly just working in my field. I wasn't having to work odd jobs anymore on top of it as much. I wasn't doing as much like side hustle stuff to make money. But long story short, that was supposed to be a year-long program. And so I ended up leaving in 6 months-ish, I think. I can't remember, because I got a job. And so I went on to that job. Didn't pay very much, but it was the right title and the right position. And I ultimately ended up not staying in that job very long either. But the original plan when I got out here was I was going to be out here for a year, and then I was going to go back to Maryland. So I put a certain amount of stuff in a bag. I sent some stuff out ahead of me to Berkeley Rep, because that's where I was supposed to be, and that was the amount of belongings that I bought to California with me, and everything else went into storage. I have a bed in storage for sure. I don't know what else is in the storage unit, but I do know there are some important papers that I would rather not lose that are in the storage unit in Maryland. I'm probably going to get rid of most of the furniture. I'm going to go through the small belongings and figure out, sorry, I'm checking on my water. I'm going to go through the small belongings and figure out what's worth keeping and what I want to let go of. And I just need to get out there and take care of it. Now, this storage unit, when I came up here, was costing me about $80-some a month. Now it's over $90 a month and pushing $100. And in fact, the original company that owned the storage unit no longer owns it anymore and sold it to another storage unit company. So now I'm paying Life Storage. I can't remember who had it before. It might have been Easy Storage or something. But either way, they were taken over by another company since I've been out here. Now, if you do the math, like, I was paying $80-some a month for the first year I was out here. I've been out here almost 3 years at this point. I was paying, $90-some a month for most of the second year. I've literally paid thousands of dollars for a storage unit for stuff I mostly do not need. And so I really want to get out to the East Coast and eliminate that storage unit. And I've been meaning to do it since the day I landed back in Berkeley. When I left Oregon, that was the plan. I was going to come back to Berkeley. I was going to get my affairs in order, and then I was going to head to the East Coast in the minivan. Now, what happened was, before I was going on the trip, I wanted to just get the van checked out. So I went and got like a full inspection just to make sure everything was good, because I don't trust that I have enough mechanical awareness to catch stuff that's really wrong. Also, I can't lift the van up in the air, whereas a mechanic can like get under there, walk around, look around, they have lifts and everything. And in fact, that's when they found that my rear differential bushing was damaged. Now, if you go straight to Toyota, they want to replace the whole part. They won't just replace the bushing. I found the bushing online. I saw another mechanic that I trust, the guy who I was actually going to get to do the work because he would just replace the bushing. And basically he was like, you're in no immediate danger. It's not going to spin off the rails anytime soon. But if you can get the bushing, I'll do the work really cheap for you. The bushing was like, I don't know, less than $100. He was going to do the work for about $70 or $80. And so I got the bushing, but then he got busy. And so I was kind of waiting on him because I'm like, okay, yeah, it's not an immediate danger, but I don't want to like go and have it become an immediate danger on the way there. And so what happened was I got contacted about this van before I got on the road. Which we'll see if that's a blessing or not. I mean, it's absolutely a blessing. Like, this van is run perfectly from the day I put the key in the ignition and drove it for the first time. Like, there's been nothing that I've felt that has been wrong with this van. And on top of that, you know, it was like set up in ways that I could not have asked for. The fridge, the solar system, even the sink. Even though I said like I probably wouldn't do a sink in the future, even that is its own blessing. Like all the fact that all of this stuff was already in the van, and that it was just a simple, like, I could have flipped it honestly exactly as it was the way he gave it to me, but I wanted to make some changes for my benefit before I went on the road. But literally, I could have just moved everything in and gotten on the road that day. But then again, I was back in a position of, okay, I have a brand new van who I haven't had for years, who I haven't done personal maintenance on for years, whose like life I have not monitored. And so, like, I wanted to get this van in for an inspection. I also had to get tags. There were so many things I needed to do before I could get on the road. And so that also led to more delays. And I'm done with the delays. It's time to go. I'm in as good of a position as I'm ever going to be. And there's always going to be a reason not to go. I've prepared myself as much as possible, and so I'm going to head my butt to the East Coast and try to eliminate this storage unit so that I can truly live free without this expense that I'm paying every month, because I'm afraid of what's in there that I don't know is in there that I really want to have. Like I said, I could see myself getting rid of most of it. What's in there that I want to keep could probably fit into a locker, and instead it's in a large storage unit that I don't need, with stuff that I mostly don't need. But I'm not going to let a payment lapse and lose something that might be important that's in there. Honestly, there's also like my baby book and pictures of my mom in there. And I may end up moving some of that stuff to a small storage unit in Berkeley that's cheaper, but Berkeley's my home base right now. It's where my email box is, but I don't want anything bigger than if I'm going to do a small storage unit, like a really tiny one, like maybe like a 10 by 10 or even smaller if I can find it, I would do it. If you could find like an actual storage locker, that would be the limit of what I need for maybe stuff I don't want in the van all the time, or don't have space for, or at least want to turn into something digital in the future. Then maybe I would get a storage unit, or at least a small storage locker or something like it for that stuff. But until I get out there, physically put my hands on the objects I put in that storage unit, and really decide what I want, what I don't want, and how I'm getting rid of the stuff I don't want, like a perfectly good bed. That bed will not fit in here without a lot of modifications, so I'm not even going to try. It is a twin bed. Like I said, I commonly slept on twin beds even before van life, so that's why it was no big deal to have like single beds in van life, or stuff that was actually smaller than single beds in van life, because like I'm just not that much of a princess. I'm not like, oh, I need at least a full-size bed, I need at least a queen, I need at least and I'm talking about single people. Like, I get it when you're a couple. Like, if you're a couple, you're like, okay, like, let's maximize, you know, our, depending on how you sleep, you know, our ability to both fit here, you know. But I'm a single. And I'm rolling as a single happily, so it's not that big of a deal for me. As long as I can fit in it and I'm comfortable, that's all that really matters. I guess that's about it. That's the story of my storage unit. And like I said, it's cost me thousands of dollars at this point to keep this storage unit in Maryland, for stuff I know I mostly don't want and don't need. There's nothing special, there's nothing particularly expensive, and even if there was, if the cost to keep it in a storage unit exceeds like its value, what's the point? That's why I don't have like a local storage unit. I did start out with one, so at one point I had two storage units, my secret storage unit in Maryland, as I call it, and my local storage unit, but that's because I was living in a car, and I didn't know, like at one point I was looking for rooms to rent. And then, you know, after a while, I was like, why? I could just get a minivan, live in the minivan, And everything I actually want to keep, I could probably keep in the minivan, because I started with a bunch of stuff in the car that I ended up getting rid of. I'm like, I'm not using this. It's in my way. I'm sick of lugging it around, and I'd like to have more space in the car. And I got really good at just getting rid of stuff. I was like, I don't use it. You know, what am I keeping it for? Even if I got an imaginary, you know, rented room in the future, it's stuff that's easily replaceable. It doesn't cost that much, and I don't know how long this is going to last. And then I made the commitment to getting the minivan, and it was pretty much, I'm never going back to house life after I had the minivan. Like, people have acted like I'm now legitimate because I have this van. I was totally legitimate in my minivan. Like, I was 100% committed. If I had lived in that minivan for another, like, year, I would have been fine. Now, I had reached a point where I was like, okay, I'm ready for a bigger van, but I was in an apartment in Oregon. I was in a free apartment, and I honestly left the free apartment early. That's how uninterested I am in apartment life. Like, I had one for free that I could have extended for another month for free, and I could have gotten on really, really, really cheap rent if I wanted to stay after that additional month. And I decided, I don't like not being able to move. I don't like not being able to travel. I don't like being tied to this address. So it's way bigger than like the size of a house. This feeling I have to be nomadic, like it's bigger than that. It's bigger than the ties of rent and expense. It's really that I want that freedom to move. I don't like the word freedom by itself, because I find it's very undefined. So we're going to transfer this water because it heated up and now it's getting cool. But I find the word freedom alone very undefined, because there's my bath. Financial freedom, which is great. Like, financial freedom is amazing. Like, I'm so much more financially free right now. I like to leave a little bit of extra water, because if this gets kind of dirty, then it's nice to have clean water that you can cycle in. Financial freedom is great. But what I've realized, and I'm going to grab my tea bags, is that it's not the end game for me. And I started out in this situation because I was financially tied. And so you would think, okay, well, financial freedom is the goal and you've gotten there, yay for you. But it's also like freedom from just being tied to anything. And I'd feel different if I had a partner or I had kids. And if I had a partner, it would be based on their desire to have some security. Security is not really a thing for me. Yes, I like to move towards as much security as I can have as I move forward in van life. But if van life means less security than it does house life, I still pick van life. And maybe it's because, like, my house life was not that good. People bring up things like insurance. I've lived most of my adult life without good health insurance. I've had periods where I had decent health insurance. I had some coverage. Amazingly, when I worked for the sandwich shop, and they were one of the few companies that did this, it was Potbelly, they had health insurance. Like, after a year, if you worked full time, which is fairly uncommon in the fast food industry, because, like, Potbelly, they're basically hot sandwiches. They're like Subway, except with an oven every single time. Like, it's not like, do you want your sandwich toasted? They are toasted sandwiches. That's their thing. And they had health insurance. So when I worked for them, I had health insurance. You had to stay there for a year and be working full time, and you had to keep full time hours to stay qualified. So it was that whole thing. But even when I had that didn't make me happier. Whereas, like, living the van life has made me happy. Even when I was in a minivan, and honestly, even when I was in the car, like, towards the end of the time I spent in the car, like, I knew the car had reached the end of its usefulness, that I need to start figuring out how to get, like, at least a minivan. Like, I knew that, because I was like, I need a bed. And there was no reasonable way that I could live with that, you know, wasn't like massive alterations to this Toyota Avalon, where I could have a bed. With a minivan, it was really simple. It was just more room than a car. It was easier to live in a minivan. For people who have successfully lived in cars, and there have been people who do it voluntarily, great. For it wasn't the right one for me. If I had to go back to a minivan, I could do it. I would like get rid of some stuff, make it work, probably get a 1-burner stove, not a 2-burner. But I could go back to a minivan easy. I could not go back to a car. That's not my thing. Not doing it. Minivan, yes. Car, no. Like, that's as low as I would go. And luckily, like, minivans are pretty accessible and affordable. So it's not like you get off cheaper with a car. In fact, you could spend more on a car. But long story short, even the end of my car life, I was happy. Like, I was like, you know what? This is great. I basically have my own home. I'm not sharing with roommates. I don't have to, like, you know, deal with other people's issues, work around spaces that belong to other people. It was great. So I don't see me giving up van life. I'm like, why? The only thing that would change my mind if I again had a partner, and I would certainly consider like bus life or RV life or some sort of vehicle life more adapted to, in my mind, couples and or children than van life. I think van life is great solo. I think it's great with, you know, a couple who consent to be in it. With children, I honestly would prefer bus or RV life. I just think those are more reasonable. Now, for people who've had to do it and have made it work, good for you. There's people who make RVs in the city work. I would never do it. For a multitude of reasons I'm not going to get into. Let me check my bath water here. It's still pretty hot. I'm probably going to throw some cold water in there. I think that's all I have to say. So I'm going to flip this around a little bit so you're looking more at my face and less at the cup as my tea steeps there. So, yeah, that's it for this video. It's probably gone on much longer than I intended. I'm going to get on the road and head towards the East Coast and try to eliminate this storage unit that's costing me $90-some a month. Peace.